On a cold, rainy afternoon in Seattle, two hungry children wandered the streets with nothing left but hope in their pockets. Then, behind a hotel dumpster, they discovered something no one would ever expect: a suitcase filled with cash. What they chose to do next didn't just save a man's future. It created a miracle that would form a brand new family. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you love stories of kindness and faith, please hit subscribe. Seattle, in the early hours of a cold winter afternoon, looked nothing like the postcard city people imagined. The sky hung low and heavy, a sheet of dull gray pressing over the skyline of glass towers and old brick buildings that lined the waterfront. The rain wasn't a storm, but a restless mist, thin needles drifting sideways on the wind, enough to soak through clothes and settle into bone. Cars hissed across wet pavement. Storefront windows glowed faintly behind fogged glass. The smell of diesel, salt water, and damp concrete mixed in the air, a scent that belonged only to a city that had learned to endure long seasons of cold. Under a flickering street lamp near an alley behind a tall office building, two small figures moved slowly, their shapes barely noticeable in the dim light. The older one was a 10-year-old boy, thin but wiry, with messy dark hair that had grown too long past his ears. His yellow t-shirt, once bright, was torn at the shoulder, and the oversized gray jacket he wore did little to shield him from the cold. The sleeves swallowed his hands, and the frayed hem brushed the tops of his soaked shoes. Despite the harsh weather, his expression carried a quiet seriousness uncommon for his age, the kind of determination carved into a child who had learned to survive more than he should. Next to him was his 7-year-old sister, wearing a faded green shirt with holes along the seams and a beige jacket far too big for her small frame. Her sandy blonde hair was tangled and damp from the mist. Dirt smudged her cheeks, and her leggings, thin and torn, clung to her legs from the wet cold. She shivered, but kept close to her brother, holding a small cloth bag meant for collecting cans. Her wide blue eyes held both fear and trust, as though the world frightened her, but her brother's presence anchored her. The two siblings walked slowly along the pavement, scanning recycling bins and dumpsters. Their shoes were thin, hardly shoes anymore, the soles worn down so much that every step splashed cold water onto their socks. They hadn't eaten since the previous morning. Hunger had turned into a hollow ache that made them lightheaded, but neither complained. They had grown used to swallowing the silence of pain. "Colder today," the girl whispered, her teeth lightly chattering. The boy glanced at her, his voice soft but steady. "We'll find more cans, enough for something warm." His tone carried a protective certainty, one shaped by the loss of their mother months earlier, a woman with gentle eyes and a soft voice, someone who had taught them kindness even when life gave them nothing. When she died, the siblings learned quickly that the world did not pause for grief. They simply moved forward, because forward was the only direction left. As they reached the narrow alley behind a towering office building, the wind tunneled sharply between the walls, pushing the mist harder against them. The alley was lined with dumpsters, broken pallets, and a sagging chain-link fence. They had searched here before. Sometimes workers tossed out soda cans during lunch breaks. Today, the alley seemed empty, until the girl stopped abruptly. "Look," she said, pointing toward the far end near a rusted dumpster. The boy narrowed his eyes. Through the haze, he saw it, a brown leather suitcase half hidden in shadow. It looked expensive, the kind of suitcase people in suits carried while rushing between taxis and meetings. Its brass corners were scratched but sturdy, and the leather straps were still intact, though splattered with rainwater and grime. The boy approached carefully, his heart picking up. Lost items in alleys usually meant trouble, but something about the suitcase felt different, out of place. The girl followed him, clutching his sleeve. "Do you think someone dropped it?" she asked, her voice trembling, not from fear but from the cold and the small stirring of hope that maybe something inside could help them. The boy placed his hand on the latch. It wasn't locked. A slight click echoed softly as he lifted it. When the lid opened, both of them froze. Inside were stacks of money, bundles wrapped neatly with bank straps. The crisp edges, the orderly rows, the sheer amount of it looked unreal, like something from a movie. The girl's eyes widened, her breath shaking. We could buy food, real food. Chicken, bread." Her voice cracked. Grandma used to say if we were ever too hungry. She couldn't finish the sentence. The idea felt dangerous even as desperation clawed at her stomach. The boy stared at the money, his mind racing. Hunger, exhaustion, the cold. They all whispered that taking just a little would not hurt anyone. But louder than all those whispers was the voice of their mother, gentle but firm, the memory of her hands brushing their hair as she said, "Don't take what isn't yours, no matter how hard life gets. Wrong things bring wrong consequences." He shook his head slowly. "No," he murmured, closing the suitcase with careful hands. "We can't. It's not ours." The girl swallowed hard, tears welling. "But we're so hungry." "I know," he whispered, brushing her shoulder. "But this money belongs to someone. Probably someone who needs it." "Like us?" she asked softly. He hesitated, his chest tightening. "Maybe, but taking it would make us thieves. Mom wouldn't want that." The girl wiped her eyes with the back of her sleeve, then nodded. She trusted him. She always had. "What do we do now?" she asked. The boy exhaled, steeling himself against the cold and the aching hunger. "We take it to the police station. They'll find the person who lost it." His voice was firm, though inside he felt a pang. He knew the walk would be long, the suitcase heavy, and their bodies weak. But doing the right thing was rarely easy. Together they gripped the suitcase handle and pulled. It was heavy, nearly as heavy as the boy. But they leaned forward, using every ounce of strength they had. The rain continued misting down, clinging to their hair and clothes as the siblings dragged the suitcase out of the alley and back toward the streetlights. Behind them, the alley returned to silence, the forgotten suitcase no longer forgotten, and the two children, exhausted, hungry, but steadfast, began a journey driven not by survival alone, but by the last piece of guidance their mother had left them. Do what is right, even when no one is watching. Michael Hart stepped out of the tall, glass-walled office building with the same calm stride he used every morning. But today, he carried something far more important than spreadsheets or contracts. In his right hand, he held a brown leather suitcase, the company's investment fund for a major deal scheduled that afternoon. Michael was 39, tall with a lean build shaped by years of physical jobs before he earned a chance to work behind a desk. His short, chestnut brown hair was neatly combed despite the rain, and a well-trimmed beard framed a face marked by quiet determination. A faint scar above his left eyebrow hinted at a difficult past, an accident from his younger days working in construction, a reminder of how hard he had fought to reach a stable life. He was respected at work for being steady, polite, and dependable, though colleagues often said he carried too much worry in his eyes, as if the weight of providing for his family never fully left his shoulders. Today, that weight was heavier. His company had trusted him with transporting the funds because he was the kind of man who never misplaced anything. Responsible, predictable, safe. Michael opened the trunk of his car, but his phone rang just as he placed the suitcase down. The call came from his supervisor, a man too impatient to tolerate delays. Michael answered, juggling keys and the falling rain, and as he spoke, a delivery truck roared past, splashing water over his shoes. Distracted, he closed the trunk. Without realizing, the suitcase had slipped from the edge and fallen onto the street behind him. He drove off, unaware that the most important object of his career remained lying in the rain. He arrived at the meeting place, a polished lobby inside a financial firm overlooking the waterfront. The building's marble floors and pristine lighting made him feel slightly underdressed, though his dark gray coat and clean jeans looked respectable enough. Waiting near the reception desk was Mr. Dalton, the company partner hosting the investment negotiation. Dalton was a man in his 50s with a rigid posture, thinning silver hair combed straight back, and steel blue eyes that sharpened like knives whenever a detail fell out of place. He was known for his temper and for firing 2 employees within a single month for minor errors. "Michael," Dalton said, his voice clipped, "where's the suitcase?" Michael's heart dropped. "It's in my car trunk." He forced a confident smile, though his pulse hammered violently. "Let me grab it." He hurried to the parking lot. When he opened the trunk, cold air rushed at him, empty space. The suitcase was gone, not misplaced, gone. His throat tightened, his hands trembled. For a few seconds he simply stood there, rain tapping against his face like needles. Then panic flooded through him. He searched the back seat, under the car, inside the lobby. Nothing. The truth sank in like a weight, dragging him underwater. Had lost it. If he didn't recover it, he would be responsible for the full amount. He would lose his job, his only good job in years. Losing it meant losing the house, drowning in debt he could never pay off. He knew the job market was merciless to men approaching their 40s without a college degree. His chest tightened until breathing felt like lifting stones. He ran back into the lobby. Dalton's expression hardened instantly. "Well?" Michael swallowed. "I need a few minutes." "Minutes for what?" Dalton's voice rose sharply. "This merger depends on timing, Michael. Timing we don't have." But Michael was already running through the exit, into the rain, scanning the street like a man searching for air. Each second felt like a countdown to the collapse of his life. He drove frantically along the route he had taken, eyes darting between sidewalks and traffic lanes. Nothing, not even a scrap of leather. Soaked and overwhelmed, he sped home. His small blue house sat at the end of a narrow street, a cozy place with potted plants arranged along the porch by his wife, Emily. She opened the door before he even reached it. Emily was 36, slender with soft brown hair tied loosely behind her head and warm hazel eyes that could calm storms. Today, her face filled with concern at the sight of her husband. "Michael, what happened?" He could barely speak. "The suitcase. The company's money. I lost it." Her expression shifted from confusion to fear, but instead of panicking, she placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "We'll figure it out." "No," he said, voice cracking. "If I don't find it, we're finished. I'll lose my job. We'll lose everything." Emily held his face in her hands, her voice firm. "Listen. Breathe. Ranger can help." At the sound of his name, their German shepherd emerged from the living room, a large, muscular dog with a thick tan and black coat and intelligent amber eyes. Ranger was 4 years old, quick to sense emotions, loyal to a fault, and trained from puppyhood to track scents after Emily rescued him from a shelter. Emily clipped the leash onto Ranger's collar. "Take him. Let him smell the car, the driveway. He'll pick up the trail." Michael nodded, wiping rain from his face as he crouched and let Ranger sniff his coat sleeves, the same ones he had used to carry the suitcase earlier. Ranger's ears perked. His tail stiffened with alert focus. "Go find it, boy," Michael whispered. Ranger pulled forward with determination, leading Michael down the street, past intersections, and toward the busier downtown area. Rain soaked them both, but the dog kept pushing. And then, after several turns through wet alleys, Ranger stopped at the entrance of a street illuminated by red and blue lights. A police station. Michael froze. Ranger nudged the door with his nose. The realization struck him. Someone had turned it in. He pushed through the entrance, breathless and dripping water onto the polished floor, praying that the impossible had somehow happened. Michael pushed through the glass doors of the police station, dripping rainwater onto the tiled floor. Ranger trotted beside him, the German shepherd's thick tan and black coat soaked, but his amber eyes sharp with purpose. The dog's ears were pricked forward, as if he already knew exactly what they had come to find. The lobby smelled faintly of wet jackets, old carpet, and the burnt aroma of stale coffee. A few officers glanced up from their desks, their expressions shifting with curiosity at the soaked man and his determined dog. At the front counter stood Officer Ben Carlson, a man in his mid-40s with broad shoulders and a square, clean-shaven jaw. His sandy brown hair was cropped short in a military style, and the deep lines around his eyes suggested years of long shifts and heavier stories than he ever shared aloud. Despite his intimidating build, his demeanor was calm and grounded, the kind of officer the community trusted. He raised an eyebrow as Michael approached. "You look like you ran through the whole city," he remarked in a warm, steady voice. Michael barely managed to catch his breath. "A suitcase," he gasped. "Brown leather. Please tell me someone turned it in." Officer Carlson nodded slowly, assessing the desperation on Michael's face. "We did have a case come in a little while ago. 2 minors brought it." He motioned toward a small waiting area near the corner of the lobby. Michael turned, and the world seemed to stop. There, sitting side by side on a wooden bench, were the 2 children. The boy with the messy dark hair and the oversized yellow shirt sat upright, his posture protective. His sister leaned against him, her thin green shirt damp and clinging to her small frame. They both looked exhausted, their cheeks pale from hunger and cold. Between them on the floor sat the suitcase, his suitcase, still closed, still soaked from the rain. Ranger let out a soft whine and gently nudged Michael forward. Michael walked toward the suitcase with trembling hands. He dropped to his knees and lifted the latch. When the lid opened, the sight of the neatly stacked bills hit him like a blow. Not because of the money itself, but because every single dollar was still there. Not a strap moved, not a bundle misplaced. His breath caught. He shut the suitcase slowly and looked up at the 2 children. "You didn't take anything," he whispered, his voice breaking. The boy shook his head firmly. "It wasn't ours, sir." His voice carried the tone of someone far older than 10, shaped by hardship, but rooted in a moral code that refused to bend. The girl nodded, her small hands clenched nervously in her lap. "Chu nengyu lai, hose la chu no tiu tien." Michael's throat tightened at the mix of innocence and understanding in her voice. He swallowed hard, wiping rain from his face even though he wasn't sure where the rain ended and the tears began. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and tried to offer them something, anything, to express the magnitude of what they had done. "Please," he said softly, "take something. You saved my life today. You don't know how bad it would have been if—" But the boy interrupted gently. "We can't take your money. You need it." The girl added, "We just wanted to help." Michael stared at them, speechless, overwhelmed by a wave of gratitude he had no words for. Ranger stepped forward, his large paws silent on the tile. The German shepherd sniffed the air around the children, then approached them one by one. He nudged the boy's knee, then licked the girl's small hand with a softness rarely seen in a dog built like a guardian. The girl giggled softly, a sound that seemed to brighten the entire station. Officer Carlson approached, arms loosely crossed. "They dragged that suitcase all the way here," he said. "Wouldn't even open it until one of us checked it." He looked at the children with quiet admiration. Kids like this, rare these days. Michael sat beside them, still kneeling on the wet floor. "What are your names?" The boy looked hesitant, but answered, "I'm Liam, and this is my sister, Ava." Two short names, simple, pure. And somehow they felt heavier and more sacred than anything else in the room. "Ava and Liam," Michael repeated slowly, as if committing them to memory. "You didn't just return a suitcase. You saved my job, my house, my life." He paused, voice cracking. "If I lost that money, chu koi nu shong roy?" Ava blinked, surprised. "Tien quan trong vai ha chu?" Michael nodded. "More than you know." Silence settled between them, gentle and warm. Officer Carlson cleared his throat. "These kids came in soaked and shivering. They haven't eaten. They're homeless, from what little they told us." His brows furrowed with quiet concern. Michael felt something shift inside him, a sudden mix of responsibility, gratitude, and something deeper he couldn't name yet. He looked at Ranger, who sat next to the children as if guarding them already. The dog's calm acceptance somehow sealed the moment. Michael murmured, almost to himself, "If not for you two, everything in my life would have fallen apart." He realized then that this meeting, this chance, unlikely moment, was about to change far more than just his day. Michael stepped out of the police station with the two children beside him, the rain now reduced to a cold drizzle that clung to their clothes and turned every breath white. Ranger walked close to Ava and Liam, the German shepherd's steady gait surprisingly gentle, as if he somehow understood their exhaustion. The streetlights cast a muted orange glow over the wet sidewalks, and the distant hum of traffic filled the quiet spaces between their footsteps. Michael glanced down at the children. Ava shivered violently, her thin arms wrapped around herself, and Liam tried to look strong but stumbled with each step from fatigue. "Come on," Michael said softly, unlocking his car. "We're getting you both somewhere warm." His voice, though calm, carried a firmness born from years of responsibility and quiet resilience. The drive through Seattle's rain-soaked streets was silent. Liam stared out the fogged window with wide, cautious eyes, unsure whether to trust what was happening. Ava leaned against Ranger, who sat between them, his thick coat warm and his presence reassuring. The dog occasionally nudged Ava's hand with his nose, comforting her in a way words never could. When they reached Michael's small blue house, the one lined with Emily's potted plants and soft porch lights, Michael felt the familiar twist of anxiety. He wasn't worried about Emily's reaction to the children. He was worried about overwhelming her. She carried her own quiet heartbreak, one he had watched her shoulder for years. He opened the front door. "Emily?" Footsteps approached quickly across the hardwood floor. Emily appeared in the doorway to the living room, wearing a soft gray sweater and jeans splattered faintly with paint from the art projects she liked to do when anxious. She was slender, with warm hazel eyes and shoulder-length brown hair tied loosely in a half bun. Her complexion was fair, almost delicate, but her expression could turn sharp with emotion in a heartbeat. When she saw Michael soaked to the bone and two thin, trembling children behind him, her entire body stiffened. "Michael, what? Who are—" Her voice cracked midway. Michael raised a hand gently. "Let me explain." A moment passed, a long, breath-held moment, before Emily stepped aside and allowed them to enter. She crouched instinctively, looking the children over. Her gaze swept over Liam's torn sleeves and Ava's soaked, oversized jacket. Her eyes glistened immediately. "Oh my God," she whispered, reaching out but stopping herself, afraid she might scare them. "They're freezing." Michael guided everyone inside and shut the door against the cold. Ranger shook water from his coat, then returned to Ava's side protectively. 20 minutes later, after wrapping the children in warm blankets and giving them 2 steaming mugs of hot cocoa, Michael told Emily everything. How the suitcase had fallen, how he nearly lost his career and their home, how the 2 children had dragged it across the city to return it untouched. Emily listened without interrupting, sitting on the couch beside them. The more she learned, the softer her expression became until her eyes were red and overflowing. She pressed her trembling fingers against her mouth. "They carried it, in the rain, all the way to the police station," she whispered. "Yes," Michael said. "They didn't take a single dollar." Ava lowered her gaze shyly, while Liam tightened his grip on the mug, as if unsure whether he was allowed to look grateful. Emily turned toward Michael, her voice shaking. "And they have no home?" Michael hesitated only a moment. "No. They've been alone for a while." Emily looked at the children again. The heartbreak on her face was unmistakable, but beneath it was something else. Something bright. Something blooming. She slowly knelt in front of Liam and Ava, her knees pressing into the rug. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. "Michael," she whispered, choking on emotion. "You don't see it? This is a sign. We've been praying for a child, praying for a chance. And today, God sent us not 1, but 2. Liam blinked, confused, and Ava looked up cautiously, her eyes shining with fear and hope tangled together. Emily reached out slowly, giving them time to pull away if they felt unsafe. When neither moved, she cupped Ava's cheek gently and placed her other hand on Liam's trembling arm. Her voice softened to a trembling whisper. "If you want, you can stay here, with us, not just for tonight." She swallowed hard. "You can stay as part of our family." Liam gasped quietly, the sound tiny but raw. Ava's bottom lip quivered. Michael stepped beside his wife. We can give you a home, warm meals, a bed, clothes, and you'll never be alone again." Emily bit her lip, tears falling freely. "Only if you want it. We won't force anything." Ava looked at Liam, searching his face for guidance. Liam stared back, his eyes filled with disbelief, as if he couldn't accept something so good could be real. Slowly, hesitantly, he nodded. Ava turned back to Emily and whispered, "Really? A family?" Emily pulled both children into her arms, crying openly now. "Yes, sweetheart. A real family," Ranger barked once, a single warm, approving sound, as if sealing the moment. And for the first time in a very long time, the two children let themselves believe in a future that wasn't built from fear, hunger, or cold, but from love. Morning light spilled softly across the quiet Seattle neighborhood as the Hart household stirred awake. The night before had been emotional, overwhelming even, but today carried a steadier warmth, one born from certainty. Liam and Ava woke up in two freshly prepared bedrooms, each painted in warm colors Emily had once chosen for a child she was never able to have. The walls smelled faintly of lavender and laundry soap, scents unfamiliar but comforting. Ranger paced the hallway outside their doors, tail wagging in rhythmic thumps against the wall as if standing guard. Michael brewed coffee in the kitchen while Emily called Seattle Social Services. Her voice trembled slightly with tension, but her eyes were determined. Emily, who often hid her emotions under gentle smiles, now showed steel under her warmth. Years of heartbreak had taught her patience, but moments like this revealed her fierce protectiveness. Within the hour, a knock sounded at the door. A woman stepped inside, a social worker named Rebecca Collins, in her mid-40s, slightly tall with a composed posture and a comforting, professional presence. She wore a long, beige coat, her dark curly hair pulled back neatly, and her expression carried both caution and kindness. Rebecca had spent years evaluating broken families, abandoned children, and desperate cases, and it showed in her deeply observant eyes. "Mr. and Mrs. Hart," she said gently, shaking their hands. "I'm here to confirm the children's situation and ensure their safety." Liam and Ava sat on the couch, still nervous but clutching mugs of warm tea that Emily had prepared. Ranger lay at their feet like a loyal guardian, occasionally glancing up whenever one of the children shifted. Rebecca knelt in front of them, softening her voice. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm here to help you, okay? Can you tell me your names?" Liam answered quietly. "I'm Liam, and this is my sister, Ava." Rebecca smiled gently. "I'm glad to meet both of you." She asked careful questions, where they had been living, how long they'd been alone, what happened to their parents. The children spoke honestly, and though their voices shook at the memories of loss, they didn't hide anything. Rebecca wrote notes, her brows pinching in visible grief. "So they truly are without guardians," she said softly to Michael and Emily after the interview. "No relatives, no emergency contacts, nothing. They've been surviving on their own for months." Michael felt something twist sharply in his chest. He looked at the children, the small hands, the oversized jackets, the tired eyes that had seen too much, and felt an ache he couldn't imagine ignoring. Emily's voice cracked as she whispered, "We want to adopt them, both of them." Rebecca regarded the couple for a long moment. Her eyes flickered to the children, then back to the home. The warmth, the pictures on the walls, the steady presence of Ranger resting protectively at the children's side. After years of navigating broken households, she recognized something rare here: sincerity without hesitation. "I'll begin the paperwork," she said finally. "Based on my assessment, I believe this is the best place for them." Relief swept through the house like a warm breeze. The children didn't fully understand the legal process, but they saw the tears in Emily's eyes and the way Michael pulled them both into a tight but trembling embrace. That was enough. Over the next 2 weeks, forms were filled out, interviews completed, background checks approved. Michael and Emily passed every requirement effortlessly. They had steady jobs, a safe home, clean records, and hearts already fully invested. Rebecca visited often, monitoring progress, Each time she arrived, she found the children happier than before. Ava was learning how to braid her hair with Emily, while Liam helped Michael repair a small wooden birdhouse in the backyard. Ranger supervised every activity, either wagging, barking, or planting himself between the children and any perceived danger like a stout, furry guardian. When the final approval letter came, Emily cried openly. Michael tried to pretend he wasn't emotional, but when Liam hugged him and whispered, "Dad," he broke completely, kneeling to hold the boy tight. Life settled into a rhythm. The children had clean clothes, warm beds, and food that didn't depend on luck or bottle collecting. They went to school for the first time in months, Ranger accompanying them to the gate each morning, trotting beside them like a proud older brother. Teachers noted how polite, grateful, and quietly brave they were, traits carved from hardship. One Saturday afternoon, Michael loaded the car with blankets and snacks while Emily packed sandwiches. It was their first family outing, a small picnic at a lake outside the city. Ava chose her brightest green shirt, and Liam fastened the buttons of his yellow coat with excitement. Ranger leapt into the back seat, tail high, eager for adventure. At the lake, sunlight glimmered on gentle ripples as seagulls circled overhead. Emily spread a blanket on the grass while Michael helped Liam skip stones across the water. Ava chased Ranger, laughing each time the dog circled back and nudged her playfully. Michael watched them, his wife, his new children, the loyal shepherd bounding freely, and felt something settle inside him, something deep and profound. "If not for your honesty," he said quietly, placing a hand on Liam's shoulder, "I might have lost everything, but instead, I gained a family." Emily slipped her arm around Ava, who leaned happily into her embrace. Ranger barked joyfully, sprinting ahead toward the trees, and the four of them followed, hand in hand, step by step, into a new future built entirely from one simple act of integrity. Not every miracle arrives with thunder from the sky or blinding rays of light. Sometimes, a miracle begins quietly, through a small act of honesty, a child's pure heart, or a moment of courage on a rainy day. Michael thought he was losing everything. Two children believed they had nothing left, but God had already been working behind the scenes. People often say, when God closes one door, He opens another, far greater than we could imagine. Those two hungry, cold children didn't just return a lost suitcase. They were walking the path God laid before them, straight into the arms of a family meant to be theirs. And Michael, a man drowning in fear, didn't just get his job back. He found the one thing he and his wife had prayed for in silence: a family to love, protect, and cherish. This was not luck, not coincidence. It was God whispering, "I see you, I know your struggle, trust me." Today, their story reminds us miracles still happen, though sometimes in small, gentle ways. Kindness creates openings where darkness once lived, and God always finds a way to place people exactly where they belong. If you believe God still works through everyday people, if you believe that honesty and kindness can still change lives, share this video with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment to let us know how this story touched your heart. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another uplifting story. May God bless you and your family. May He guide your steps, strengthen your spirit, and fill your home with peace. God bless you. God bless your home. And may His miracles find you right where you are, you.